powers that assail mankind's realm. When the ruling cabals of hooded and bionically augmented tech priests commit their vast armies to battle, they've already enumerated every parameter. Each variable has been measured and assigned a probability matrix. All that remains is to execute the protocols of war, which are handed down to the priesthood's semi-mechanical followers as divine signs, undeniable proofs of the machine god's power. To face the Adeptus Mechanicus is to oppose those who have already calculated your demise. From their sovereign holdings on industry-choked and smog-wreathed forge worlds, the Adeptus Mechanicus reach out to scour the dim reaches of the galaxy for forgotten fragments of archaeotech from mankind's past. Their rulers are fanatically zealous, rigidly dogmatic, and revere technology as the object of their devotions. Yet true understanding of the artifacts they seek ever gives way to a greater principle: worship of their machine god, who invests creations with the motive force. Verbal protocols have devolved into murmured chants, rigorous theorems into religious doctrine, and technological revolution into assault-defying inertia. They aspire to the purity of the machine, but the Adeptus Mechanicus retain all the fervent faith and obsessive ambition of their humanity.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The new Admech Codex is here, and I'm going to be spending some time today to talk about the lore in it. People have reviewed the rules, people have reviewed the crusade aspects. I have not seen a single person review the lore that is in this codex, and it is absolutely packed with factoids, gorgeous art, and everything you would ever want to know about your favorite mad scientists / evangelicals in the Adeptus Mechanicus. We're gonna get right into it here first, and we have a couple of different sections to go through, but before that, just a short introduction to the faction. Immediately I gotta point it out. I hate to do it. On page 3, one of the very first pages of the book, they straight up say the detailed mechanisms and bionic limbs can be quickly and easily painted to a high standard with minimal effort, brought to life with simple techniques. Games Workshop, I say this to you. That is a lie. That is a lie, good sir. The Admech are notoriously difficult to build and paint. Let's get into what we're here for, which is the actual lore, the storytelling, the facts. And to get started, we're going to go with a section that I call Game Changers. This is potentially new information. This is my first codex, so maybe this stuff is known, but this is new information to me at least, and expanded lore to things that haven't gotten much lore before, and what the stuff that might have like a greater implication for the rest of the army and how we think about it and how we sort of conceptualize the Admech. So let's get started with some game changers. The first thing we have in the very beginning of the codex is a very straightforward definition of the divine trinity of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and that is specifically the machine god Omnissiah and the motive force. If you know the Admech, that you're already familiar with these, but this section breaks it down specifically with the machine god being the source of all knowledge, the Omnissiah being the embodiment of wisdom, and the motive force being the animus that empowers all things, gives movement to things biological and mechanical. I think it's the first time we've gotten such a straightforward definition. It's always been sort of like a cloudy area in the lore, I think. So it's nice to actually get that. And then it goes on to name the armies of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and it specifically names the Scutarii legions, which most people know of. It's like 3/4 of our army on the tabletop right now, in 40k at least. And then we also have the Legio Cybernetica, which is the automatons and robots such as Castellans and a bunch of things in the Horus Heresy. We also have the Centurio Ordinatus, totally unique, custom-built Leviathan war machines that are built for one specific purpose and one specific purpose only. Following up, we have the Ordo Reductor, the Siege Warfare. So they're all about destruction, and they're pretty damn good at it too. We have the Auxilla Myrmidon, the Caste of Destruction Savants, These are like physical tech priests who take the field and kill stuff. And then we got the Collegia Titanica, which is Titans. They're giant, you know, potentially city-sized, cathedral-sized war machines. They're basically Gundams, but like a lot bigger and a lot scarier. So those are the armies that are specifically listed by names. A lot of these are present in the Horus Heresy setting. In the 40k universe, all we have access to on the tabletop is currently the Scutarii Legions, a little bit of Legio Cybernetica, and some Titans technically. If you're playing like Apocalypse, you can run like a Titan because they cost like 20,000 points or something like that. I think that's the beginning of the book. We get some nice tight definitions of these terms, and we get a nice tight sort of wrapping around what specifically is a part of the army in Admech, which, you know, I don't know if it's ever been laid out in such plain and simple terms before, but I like that. It gives homebrewers like me a good jumping off point to kind of start filling out the rest of the army that might not be on the tabletop. Next, we got some lore of two very important HQs. The Manipulus, who is a recent addition to the army, somewhat recent, not the newest addition to the army, but somewhat recent, and the Tech Priest Dominus, both of which have kind of nebulous lore around them. And this codex, again, kind of clears things up a little bit and wraps it in a nice, simple package. So the Tech Priest Manipulus, we still don't really know where they sit in terms of like their division of research or anything like that in the hierarchy. That is still unclear as of the writing of this codex. But we do know that they are a wielder of the motive force. That is what they're most dedicated to, kind of like the Electro Priests, although they are not one, I think. It's hard to tell sometimes, but I'm pretty sure they're not. And their battlefield rules are represented by draining the nearby power sources, the battlefield from the enemy, from anything else, and overcharging the arms and armaments of nearby warriors to give them a little bit of extra range and extra armor piercing, which means I think he literally makes their bullets fire faster. If you're thinking about giving something extra range and extra armor piercing, speed's going to do both of those things really well. And then we have the Tech Priest Dominus, one of the sort of iconic HQ choices on the battlefield. And the Tech Priest Dominus, it has been clarified that Tech Priests sort of adopt the rank of Dominus in the time of war or in a time of conflict. It's not really a strictly given rank. It's something that any Tech Priest can kind of take on the role of if needed, and some of them just kind of like it, so they keep being a Dominus for as long as they want to. There's not really any rule that stops them from doing that, so I thought that was kind of cool. They just keep doing it for as long as they want. But it's most typically seen when a fleet or a world is attacked, and the most senior Tech Priest there will often be the one who adopts the title of Dominus and starts leading the battle and mobilizing the armies and doing everything like that. And there's a really nice story that encapsulates that, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Next, we get to the planet of Mars, and this might be my favorite art in the entire book. We get a really nice picture of the surface of Mars here. And you can see all of like this scarring and sort of terraforming and technological sort of expansion. You got the ring of iron around it. You got this like beautiful sort of skull-shaped mega structure. I don't even know what it is, but it's like it's in the shape of a freaking skull. It looks awesome. It gives a little bit of background about Mars. It gives a little bit of background about the planet itself, its characteristics, its history, and things like that. You know, it's the second most important planet in the Imperium, and it just gives a really nice sort of vivid description of what it would be like to exist on Mars. And let me tell you, it's not too great. I mean, I don't think any place in 40k is, but Mars is definitely not. A little bit later, we get into a more detailed look of Mars. And what's really cool about this part is that it actually gives a lore explanation for the Marishan dogma on the battlefield, which gives Skitarii the Canticles of the Omnissiah ability. And the lore explanation for that is kind of cool, as the Skitarii of Mars are inducted into some of the lesser mysteries of the cult Mechanicus. Because Mars priests or at least see themselves as the most holy, then they think that their tools and creations, which they consider Skitarii to be as just like a mere tool on the battlefield, should also be more holy than others. So they induct them a little bit further into the cult than most other Forge Worlds do, which gives them that extra ability that we see on the tabletop. And that's just kind of like a cool sort of lore explanation for the rules, and I always love to see that. We say that in the other Forge Worlds too, but it's mostly known stuff. You know, Lucius is good at teleportation, Ryza is constantly attacked by orcs, so they got really good at close combat. There's all these other kind of things, but Mars had like a recent rules change to their ability, and then they had a lore justification for it, and it's just great to see that, I think. We also have a whole spread for Belisarius Call himself, a man of many titles, an arcanologist, a fabricator, Tyrannus Mechanicum, progenitor majoris. He's also previously been a Forge Lord, Lexco Arcanus, and Magus Biologus. He also has the title of Prime Conduit of the Omnissiah, which we learn here. It's previously mentioned in the book, The Great Work, but we learn here it's a special title given by Mars to priests who show up miraculous levels of accumulated knowledge and expertise. Some other sort of game-changing lore that we learn in this codex, as far as I'm aware, this is new information. Maybe it's been listed before. I haven't encountered it yet. Stygius, the Forge World, was apparently saved by the Eldari during the Horus Heresy. That Forge World was almost lost to the Imperium, but the Eldari came in and kind of helped them out, and literally no one on the planet knows it, not even the Fabricator General, the Fabricator General being the leader of the Forge World, like the top dog. Maybe that is kind of why they're super into Xenos now, who knows. We also learn kind of an interesting factoid, and I wasn't sure if it's game-changing or not, but it's not anything I've heard of before, and it's that the number 12 is a sacred number to the Adeptus Mechanicus. No explanation is really given on that. I would have liked to hear a little bit more about that, but that's all we get. The number 12 is significant. I don't know why, but I don't know. It could be a cool thing to explore in the future. I wish there was like a little bit more illumination on that, to be honest. It comes in one of the later sections talking about the makeup of a Skitarii army, and they have 12 maniples because it's a sacred number. And again, we don't know why. We know Korn likes the number 8. We know Nurgle likes the number 7. Sinch likes the number 9, I think. And I don't know, Slanesh like 6, maybe? I don't know. All the Chaos Gods have sacred numbers, and apparently the Mechanicus do too, but that's not really explained at all why they do. But they got one. Another thing that we learn is that there are no existing records of a tech priest converting to be 100% mechanical. So every single tech priest has like a little bit of a fleshy bit on them still. Even if they're just a brain in a jar, which also exists, they at least have that. There are 0 purely mechanical beings that are considered tech priests. No one has converted themselves 100% that we know of so far. That's an important thing to know for a homebrewer, I guess. If you're thinking about doing something like that, it would definitely be super heretical, I think. But yeah, something to keep in mind if you're trying to do some Admech homebrew. Everybody's got like a little bit of the soft stuff in there. And kind of an interesting fun fact on the side, the fleshy bits, even if they fall off or die or like get damaged, they just grow some new ones or take them from donors, willing or unwilling. So it's not even their flesh necessarily, it's just some kind of flesh, which I thought was an interesting kind of implication there, because so even if like some like dude has a normal arm gets blasted off or something, he will replace that with a normal arm and not necessarily go for a mechanical upgrade in that case. So the fact that tech priests are actually replacing destroyed flesh with more flesh, I thought was kind of interesting. I thought they would have just replaced it with more kind of mechanical augmentations, but apparently that's not the case. The next section here is something that I am going to call Did You Know? Which is just a lot of little kind of fun facts and interesting tidbits of various lore bits. Some of it's known, some of it is new, I think, but they're just like little kind of fun facts that are sprinkled in the codex. This is the lightning round, let's say. Apparently, Scutarii have their eyelids removed on inception, so they'll never miss a chance to see the Omnisci's glory. Horrifying, truly awful. That's specifically noted as a fact. That Scutarii specifically don't have eyelids. And also, after Scutarii begin to don their armor, they almost never remove it after being augmented. Vanguard are notably ugly, specifically, again, being highly kind of cancerous and sick and dying people encased in metal. It probably doesn't smell too good either. They got no eyelids. They got like all these like open sores and things like that from the highly irradiated environments that they exist in. So, you know, that's no good. That's no good. Not a good time to be a Scutarii. Cerberus Corps. That's one of the newer units. We got them in Psychic Awakening, and I don't think there's been much lore on them yet. So we get quite a bit of lore on the Cerberus. We get to learn that they are promoted infantry soldiers, and they are perched atop loping mechanical cyber canids. That's right, they're cyber canids. There was some speculation that they were human servitors that were reshaped into a canid form. Oh man, that is hard to say. Some thought they were people that were cut up and shaped like dogs. That's not the case. They're cyber canids, kind of like a cyber mastiff, I have to imagine. We also learned that the Dune Crawler is a sacred battle reliquary protected by the machine god itself, or at least that's how it's seen by the Scutarii. It has this sort of holy venerability around it, kind of like a Space Marine Dreadnought or a Sisters of Battle Exorcist tank or something like that. It has a sort of holy aura. One thing I really like about this codex is there's kind of two directions. There's two kind of competing ideologies of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and that's sort of like the classic sci-fi mad scientist trope and the religious zealot trope. And this book seems to focus heavily on the religious zealot side, which I like quite a bit. I think that's a really interesting way to kind of lean in for the faction in terms of lore and storytelling. We also have the Taraxi, another new unit in Psychic Awakening. They're implanted with limb stumps that plug into membranous wing packs. But what I thought was kind of funny is that the Taraxi sterilizers are routinely used to purge orbital docks or manufactorum factory rafters of pests and other such detritus. Basically, they're not soldiers. They're janitors they're janitors with flamethrowers. But they're also taken on the battlefield when needed, apparently. And Taraxi Skystalkers are almost subconscious. They have most of their brain function entirely taken away from them, so they're operating basically on pure reflex alone. Another terrifying invention that I would never want to interact with, coming straight from the minds of the tech priests. We also learned that the Minor Forge World Voss Prime is bad at plasma. I don't know why. They just can't do it. They're not good at plasma. Who knows? And that the Night House steel of Deimos, the Forge World that helps out the Grey Knights, has taken a vow of silence. I'd ask them why, but I wouldn't expect to get much back. Some other stuff that we do know, Iron Strider engines. It's a little bit hard to see, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. They got a little servitor dude, a person that is permanently added into the device, and he steers, and that's the only thing he does. That's his purpose in life.
What is my purpose?
You dear.
Oh my god.
We got the skull of Elder Nicola making a comeback, one of my favorite relics in the faction. This is literally Nikola Tesla's skull that has been turned into a servo skull, and now it makes a giant explosion and kills vehicles. It's pretty sick. that they have that in the lore. Lucius has their finger and their thumb in the shape of a giant L on the surface of their planet. Also, their planet is hollow and might have xenotech powering its artificial sun. We don't know. There are plenty of tech priests who don't have a head. They dispense with their head entirely. Their organic brain instead supported in crystal jars linked by complex neural interfaces. That's right, we got confirmation of brain in a jar tech priests. I would love to see those on the battlefield, and as it so happens, Nebuchadnezzar kind of is one. Next, we got a section that I like to call names. There's a whole lot of names and titles and things like that in this book that are great for homebrewers to get inspiration from, that are great for other people who are just really interested in the structure of a Forge World and the Adeptus Mechanicus to glean some knowledge from. So let's learn about some of these names. Starting with one of my favorites here, we got the Forge World Delphi, or Delphi, I'm not sure how that's pronounced. Clearly based off of the, I think, Greek legendary city. It's either Greek or Roman, I believe it's Greek. It's a Forge World that's located on the eastern fringe, and it's run by a trio of lady fabricator generals known as the Charities of Delphi. We got Lady Euphrosyne, Lady Thylia, and Lady Agilitrix. You know, this is, the spelling here is out of control. But it's, what's really cool is that, one, we got some female fabricator generals confirmed, and it's cool that it just has this little snippet of a Forge World that nobody has heard of before. I think that's completely new. We also got a bunch of named characters here. We got Magus Haptus, Pol Yalgathin, Techno-Archaeologist Parangos Van Qual, Proctor Dominus Thargosin, Dak 27 of the Kulix Blackguard, which is something on Stygies, and I don't know what it is, but it sounds sick. We also have Overseer Imperator Teague Chivan of Planetas, who takes a prominent role in a story I'll describe a little bit later, but she's also a named female tech priest. So it's great that we're getting like quite a few more female characters, which have historically not really existed too much amongst the Adeptus Mechanicus. So that's awesome to see. We also have 4 separate explorer fleets named and given short descriptions in the book, and the explorer fleets are basically the forward driving fleets, you know, navies of the Adeptus Mechanicus, with a bunch of their armies and a bunch of their researchers out in the quest to collect more knowledge and ancient secrets from humanity's past, as well as catalog and exterminate xenospecies and other things like that. There's also 3 new, as far as I can tell, xenos or alien species mentioned in this book: the Chimeria, Kinabrak, and Striate. 3 new aliens. I don't know what they do. They're mentioned briefly, and there's no description given to any. And then we get to the roles and titles of the Adeptus Mechanicus. We have some old returning favorites from the Mechanicus game, as well as other sources and codexes, and even on the board themselves. We got Engine Series, we got Lex Mechanics, the Prime Hermeticon, the Necromechanic, Techno-Archaeologist, and then we got a whole bunch of other titles that are either new or not existing in other sources. Specifically, we got Techno Shamans, New Spheric Spectocrats, and a whole bunch of Holy Order titles. Let's see how I can rapid fire these. We got a Data Predator, Gerontocrat, Invictus Acquisitor, Mackay Morbundus, Lord Dogma, Genitor Extremis, Corpus Illuminator, Magisurgeon, Grand Parasite, Archimist, Magus Biologist, Biocogitatus, Info Executioner, Monitor Malevolus, Hyper Rationalist, Bibliophiliac, Lexico Arcanus, Cybersmith, Praetor Electroid, Mechasapien, and Forge Lord. That's a lot of information. We also have the 5 different languages that the tech priests communicate through, which are the Binary Cant, Lingua Technis, Hexamathic Toad, New Spheric Bleed, and Nova Bite. To human ears, all of these sound like our bleeps, bloops, hisses, crackles, and just various computational sounds. And then there's a bunch of extras included in this book as well, in the lore. In the Forge World section, we got 4 of the minor Forge Worlds mentioned, the ones that don't get rules. We got Triplix Fall, Deimos, Voz Prime, and Griffin 4, each getting their own section, which I thought was a nice touch to get a look at those other more minor factions. And the painting sort of showcase section highlights some of those armies as well. We have 2 stories in this book. One of them takes place during the events of Warzone Metallica in the books of like Cheridin, and this involves the previously mentioned Overseer Imperator Ti Chi Van of Planetes, a tech priestess of Metallica, adopting the role of Dominus, and it gives a really cool kind of macro level leadership position of what a war with the Adeptus Mechanicus actually looks like. But I thought those sort of things are cool to see, the sort of like macro battlefield tactics that the tech priests employ in order to drive back attackers. We also get another story about the Cerberus Raiders, and this is a much more ground level story, very sort of like in character on the field, following one specific character and his squad mates as they take to the field and encounter some Eldari warp spiders. It's a great read, and it gets a really interesting and not often seen peek into the fanatical and highly augmented mind of a Skitarii foot troop. Well, dog troop. But it's a really cool story, and I think it illustrates, you know, one of those pieces of the faction that we don't see too much. We see a lot of the mad scientists in the tech priests and stuff like that. And it's cool to get a glance at a sort of foot soldier's story. Definitely worth a read. Honestly, in my world, the art in this book is worth the price of admission itself. It's filled with gorgeous illustrations, full page spreads, things of that nature. And there's a lot of like great stories and blurbs and lore in here as well. If you're not playing Admech and you have no interest in the rules, I don't think I would recommend it for purchase. There's specifically, I think, about 50 pages that are just lore. The rest of it is rules with lore sprinklings. But if you're looking for specifically lore, I would say pick up a novel instead for a much cheaper price. You'll get a lot more bang out of your buck for that. But there is a lot of really interesting stuff in this book. So if you're into Admech and you're already planning on collecting the army, or at least considering it, it's definitely worth a pickup or some additional research. A lot of this information is going to be available on fan wikis and stuff in the future in a more sort of succinct outline manner typically. But this does have a lot of good info in it. And if you are an Admech player, I think you'll be really happy with the lore that's in here. I had a really fun time reading through it and learning all of this new stuff. It being my first Admech Codex, a lot of it was new information to me. I might have repeated some stuff that you guys already know. I apologize if that was the case, but you know, as a new collector, there's only so much knowledge I can have. Overall though, I think it's a great book. It's definitely worth the money. Love when they add that stuff into the rule books, so you get to learn not only how your faction plays, but how it should feel. If you're a homebrewer, it's a massive trove of information. There's stuff that I didn't even mention, types of materials that are used in construction. If you want to get really crunchy with your lore, they have things like that. They have all of the titles that I listed before if you want to come up with named characters. They have all of these sort of just ridiculous concepts, so you know that kind of whatever you're doing with your Forge World, it's probably within the realms of possibility in the Adeptus Mechanicus. So that's all I have for you guys this week. I hope you enjoyed my journey through this book. If you enjoyed my content and you're not already, consider throwing a subscribe to the video. And if you liked it, consider throwing it a like as well. Let me know what you think of the Codex in the comments. Did you like the lore? Did you like the rules? Let me know. And I will see you guys next week with another video. Peace.